And now, you've already put your hands together. Thanks for that warm welcome for your host, Chris Burke.
And welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on campus. And for those of you that are joining us online, thank you as well. My name is Chris Burke. I'm the program director to the Web Design and Development degrees here. And it's my great pleasure to be hosting today's session entitled Web Shift, an Engineer's Look into the Future of Web. So please help me welcome to the stage your presenter. He's a freelance developer and instructor here in the Web Design and Development degrees, Mr. Joe Cavagna.
Thank you. And ready back there with the slides? Yes, no? All right, there we go. Wait, that's not the right slide. There we go. So today I'm going to talk about the future of web. And what you have to understand is we need to know the past, right? We need to know where we came from. So you're here to hear a nice long rant about the history and the future of web. A little bit of a disclaimer. This is my opinions. What I'm about to tell you may or may not come true. I don't have my magic ball. I just want to tell you that, if it doesn't go like I plan, don't say that I didn't, warn you that I may not be able to read the future. So today we're going to talk about this man, this guy sleeping, and this song.
The internet is really, really great.
Orb. Yeah, okay. So strap in and ready for a little bit of lecture lane. We're going to talk about this date. Does anyone know what this date is? Besides, being August 6, 1991. What's significant about this date? Say again? No, it's not PHP's date. So this was the date that the first web page was launched. This was the birth of the web. From here, the world changed completely, right? We didn't have all the information in our pockets. We had to read books to get the information we wanted. I was told as a child, go look it up in the encyclopedia. Grab the book, flip through the page. Oh, we were giving something where the world's knowledge is now ours. So, a brief history. The web has had a rocky start, I guess you could say. We've been driven by factors that we can't really talk about, being this isn't educational, but it's changed all of us. We talk about the big topic of today is fake news, right? Go back 25 years ago, people could tell us whatever they wanted. We could not fact check easily. We couldn't be sitting in a bar and be like, no, that's not right. So the web was just a page, just information, text links. Designers hated it. They were absolutely appalled that they couldn't take their print designs and move them to the web. So in 1996, 5 years after the web started, we finally said, hey, we could use tables to lay it out like an actual page, like a magazine, have our columns, have our pictures. So for 5 years, there was none of that. Just links, text, a couple images, horrible, horrible colors with flashy banners at the top. We got table layouts. It wasn't ideal, right? Updating it, looking at it, it was just something very difficult to work with. So as time progressed, time being another couple of years, we finally got Flash and CSS. Now, Flash was very bulky. It required a plugin, and most users didn't have it. They had to go and download it to whatever browser you're using. CSS, on the other hand, was choose your own adventure. There's two separate browsers. There's a browser war, kind of like today we have Android and iPhone. And whenever you went to a site, you go and you're like, oh, which browser am I using? I'm using that one. I have a decent connection. Please take me to the site. For the love of God, take me to the site. So Flash was a container that didn't matter which type of browser you're using. You needed a good connection because it was very, very detailed. And it solved the problem of, now I can do crazy interaction with, the web, which was unheard of at the time. CSS, people were still figuring it out. They're like, how can I float things? How can I make it look like a table? How can I get that experience that we so crave? So, 2000, JavaScript finally works. Not in the way that we use it today, but it worked. We can actually start animating some things, looking at it and be like, oh, hey, look at my hover, great. Still wasn't there. Flash was still dominant. Flash really made the web kind of like a comic book, and it started to really weigh on people until 2003. In 2003, we had the Zen Garden. Any old developers will know about Zen Garden. It was a site that challenged us. It told us, hey, take this base HTML and do whatever you want with the CSS. It really inspired us to let us know that we can now update our sites just by changing a CSS file. We didn't have to change out a file, recompile the code, send it back up with Flash. This really changed how we did everything. Being able to quickly develop sites, just being able to do anything that we needed to do in a fashion that didn't make us want to just end ourselves. Then 2005 came. This changed everything. A lot of times when Web 2.0 is referenced, they're talking about when jQuery and Ajax came about. It is in that little gap between, the 2003 and 2005 when we are now using CSS, now we're using Ajax and jQuery to get data that we didn't have to reload the page every time. This made a huge change. Flash was freaking out. They had to pivot. They had to say, oh, no, wait, hey, guys, don't forget about us. We still work. And it was really, after that, relegated to just delivering content to site like videos. I mean, up until recently, YouTube was using Flash video, recently being a couple of years ago. So, what is Ajax and jQuery? It's the asynchronous web. You didn't have to refresh the page. You can actually go and update content. So users didn't realize there's new data being loaded in. This was huge because everything was static up until this point. It required a reload every single time. And with cell phones coming out that could actually browse the web, you didn't want that because there's more requests, phones were slow, it was terrible. Terrible, terrible. And then 2008, the dawn of the mobile web. So this, again, flipped the entire web on its head. Up until that point, everything was that table sort of thought process. This is a page. We have to keep these grid layouts. Everything has to be static. So for us to move forward, we had to think differently. We took ourselves away from just being at the computer at home or at work and browsing information. We had active users in our pocket every day, all the time. And it was a pain. Pinching on websites, trying to get a website to display on a phone was difficult. So the solution was build a separate site for the mobile experience versus the web. Wasn't ideal. Responsive design came out. We were now able to use media queries to shrink the web, stretch the web, big displays, small displays, anything. And it really changed the thought process of you have to be at a screen to use the web. Sure, it's a smaller screen, but something different. And a lot of things branched out from that. We're no longer looking at a little monitor going, hey, what can we do here? Let's think a little bit different. Then a sad, sad time. Steve Jobs killed Flash. So between when mobile became popular and everyone had a phone and the unfortunate events of Flash, we were trying to find ways to bring that experience from the web to the phone. Be able to not have to write specific code for one or the other. We still wanted that interactive design of, hey, this is really fun, this is great, without having to program specifically for each phone. Flash solved that for a long time. There was Air applications. It was great, but They were heavy, they were slow. We needed to find a better way. So, killed it. But as web developers, we need to really be able to deliver that content. I mean, how many of you downloaded the app, signed up again, just to find out what event you wanted to go to? Would it not have been easier just to go to a website and click on that one little button and be like, oh, here's the schedule for the day? And that's really the goal of web developers. It's the magic box. You can put any web address in there, and it takes you to an application loaded onto any device that you're using, whether it be your phone, your computer, your refrigerator. And it's just getting crazy. So this is kind of what's leading us into the future. So I haven't really talked about the back-end development yet, which is my love. And in 2010, everything changed for that as well. Up until that, everyone loved LAMP. LAMP, 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 LAMP. And then 2010 with JavaScript libraries, Node came about. We now had a new package manager that could do same thing as all the traditional languages, whether it be PHP, Cold Fusion, Ruby on Rails, Python, name blah. It would go on forever if I listened here. But this was particularly important because JavaScript developers up until this point had been confined to the front end. Back in the day, you were a front-end developer, a back-end developer, full stack, buzzwords that have changed over time. Now a full stack is somebody that does everything and then some. Back then it was like, hey, I could use HTML, CSS, and PHP and JavaScript. I'm great. Now it goes much, much beyond that. So with the advent of Node, it changed, once again, what we can do. It was fast. It was lightweight. We could use it on mobile devices. We can do anything. Up until 2016, which we have dubbed the year of the framework. There's a framework released almost every single day in 2016. It's crazy. And this leads me to the future, what we're actually here to talk about. With the history of the web behind us, we've had some major changes over the years. We've gone from editing a single text document with HTML, which was one single paper, to making these huge applications. And it's gone from the hardcore developer to the average user, back to the hardcore developer, and now we're going into that time again where something new is out there. So, kind of want to remind you that along the way we've had some things that kind of helped us get through that time. And that's the tools of the future and the past. So when it was just text documents, you had to be a real, I don't know, nerd, whatever you want to call it, to really get into the code and type out and make, hey, look what I can do on this screen. Then we had things like Dreamweaver come along. I can now use my WYSIWYG. Now on the back, for the coders, it was, hey, oh, that's terrible. I can't use this because it puts out this bad code. But for the average user, it was great. They can now make a web page on their own. Then, people said, hey, there's better solutions. We had WordPress come after that. Again, allow the basic user to make these fully functional apps, making their own blog. They can now go to and pull content they've written themselves and update it constantly. And it's kind of been, the whole, we're making tools for us, we're making tools for the user. Now we're going back to, we need to start making tools for us. With the push of getting all the JavaScript developers from the front end to the back end, we've come to a new sort of issue, I guess you could say it is, where task runners and everything is bringing people back to the terminal, which is fine, but that's not easy for the average user. So I see a lot of companies starting to prop up, and this is probably going to go into the near future, where as engineers, we're going to have to make tools to bring these new developers the things they need to be able to develop and make these interactive sites. It's really going to define how we go forward as developers. Recently, there's an article saying that coders are the new blue collar. Well, I guess it depends where you fall on the spectrum, right? Whether you're the one making the tools for the other developers to use, or you being a developer that uses those tools. This is what's going to define our future. The Internet of Things. It's like that nebulous out there. We hear about it all the time. recently there's the huge hacks using the Internet of Things, pinging back and bringing down sites. But this ranges from the refrigerator, the coffee pot, the nanny cam, everything that's out there. We're engineers, and we think that we're confined to this small little space, or the phone, or something else. We have to think bigger. We have to think that how can we incorporate this knowledge that we're using, this ability to reach out to anywhere in the world and control it. Well, control it, that sounds a little ominous, but we can do a lot more than just make for the web. As developers, we can go and do surgery across the world. There's recently a technology that was pushed out about that, about minimizing packets so they can do surgery, minute surgery, just through an internet connection across the world, just using VR screens. It's great. So the Internet of Things is something we could also look forward to as far as what we can do with the internet. What can we do with this technology? What can we do as programmers? And that comes to the major thing of what we do. We're problem solvers. Whether it be we're making new tools for newer developers or the average user, or if we're making these complex programs for who knows what, we have to always understand that the future for us is to solve the problems of the people who come after us. It really, most of us know that all we do all day is we code and we put out things and we hit a problem and we Google, like, why isn't this working? Okay, somebody else has had this problem, we have to figure it out. Or if we can't find our problem, we have to figure out a route to get around that. Problem solving is the key role of a developer, really. And then we have the blurred lines of where reality begins and the internet ends. Does it matter anymore? Recently, Amazon's putting out their new little stores that you walk in, you have your phone in your pocket, you pick up the items, you walk out. It knows. It's the internet coming to life. When I was a kid, they told me, don't meet people off the internet. And you don't go hitchhiking because you don't get in cars with a stranger. One of the big problems that was solved by Uber was you call people on the internet, tell them to come pick you up. Meeting people off the internet, get in the cars with them. It's great. What used to be the internet and the division between the internet and real life has blurred now. There's so much that we have incorporated from that to our daily lives that we can't live without anymore. Some of you probably have been looking on your computers or your phones or whatever just to fact check me this whole time because we can. And we have to understand that what we used to do, the way we used to think about how we separate everything is no longer as important because we have this technology. Let's use it to the best of our abilities. So that's the end. Or is it? All right, come back up. Chris, you got something for me?
No. Or is it the end?
Is it the end? I want to hear a bit from you guys. What do you guys think?
Round of applause for Joe over here. Folks, at this time we have a little bit of time for some questions. So feel free to ask. If you're here in the audience, if you would please raise your hand, and we'll have a microphone run around to you so that the folks that are joining us online can also hear the question. For those of you that are joining us online, if you would please direct your questions to our moderator. They will help get your questions answered live here by Joe. I actually have a question to start off with.
Sure.
And then I'll step away for everyone else. You mentioned lamp. For those that might not be familiar with what lamp stacks are, can you sort of further define them?
So for a long time, our industry, our technology stack and how we get things out has been LAMP, which is the operating system of Linux, Apache, MySQL, or any sort of database, and PHP. These are kind of been the staple of how web pages are delivered. I believe Linux came out in '92, which was not very long after the first web page was launched. So it was very much a part of the beginning of the web. PHP was given to us in '93, and it's been really the staple, the go-to. And I talked a lot about the front end, but it's because those back-end technologies were giving that experience, whether it be they're writing in PHP or they're doing Cold Fusion website, it was still pumping out HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and all the things that we know today, up until very recently with the advent of Node.
My question is hopefully not as complex as I think it is. Bear with me.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm very foreign to this. With what we're seeing now, with like a boom in more visual-based technologies, like virtual reality, things that, like you said, they blur the lines between what we see as reality and like, what used to be separate as the internet. Is it plausible that we're going to start seeing more of like a more, I'd say, idiot-friendly version of visible, touchable code?
So, to answer that, yes, I think we will, actually, because that's how the web has always been. It sounds, like it still has that barrier of like, oh, I don't know if I can make a web page. But I mean, the popular sites now is like Wix, right? You don't have to code anything for that. You just go in there and you make a website. It's the definition of us moving forward is us making those tools and give people the opportunity to reach out to do things that they couldn't before because of that limitation. I think it will always be the battle of, trying something new, doing something new, making the tool that allows people to move forward with that. And just not the super users, the coders and whatnot, but everybody. Because that, in the end, that's the goal, right? We all want to communicate. We want to connect with other people. We want to be able to do those things and share our experiences. So I do think, yes, that we will be looking forward to a time when anyone can make anything. It's just we have to take the steps to get there. Does that answer your question?
Thank you for your talk, Joe. Recently, Apple open source Swift. You can actually see the source code on GitHub these days.
Mm-hmm.
And there's talk about Swift becoming a back-end language. I wonder what your thoughts are on that. And my caveat to that question is, will jobs kill PHP?
Well, no. So all languages, whether it be Swift, PHP, any of them, they're all tools, right? They're all there to accomplish a task. A lot of the times you see arguments about, the creation of tools because it makes those who have used that language or the predecessors to that a little bit bitter that we went through the trenches, we don't need this new thing. But in the end, they have to have their specific use. A good example of that is PHP, again, is the staple. It's 75% of the internet. But what's the reason for us to use any other language? Well, they have different mechanisms that we didn't have before. Like with Node, we have asynchronous coding now. It's a new tool. It's a new thing that we can use, add to our disposal to accomplish a particular task. And I think that's it may not be specific to Swift. If it serves a better purpose, if it does something better, I think you'll see people using it. And as far as what the legacy is to that, if it's completely, covered and done better in somewhere else, it will eventually fall out of favor. There's been languages in the past that we don't use anymore, but you're going to still have people that know that language and that they'll still continue to use it, and there'll always be legacy support for certain things because people don't like change. So it could be the next thing, but I don't think it's going to kill PHP, at least not right away.
Hey there. The question is, what's going on about PAMP server, P-A-M-P?
PAMP server. Could they be a little bit more specific on that?
Yeah. And then I have Amin about that PAMP server. So, not sure.
So,
We can pass on that.
sure. Well, I'm guessing that they're referring to. I don't know what they're going for with the P on there. What operating system that would be? I'm guessing it'd be Apache, MySQL, and Python or PHP. But I don't understand what their first.
I'll get clarification.
See if they can get a little bit more clarification on that, and I'll happy to answer them.
So you're talking about.
You're good.
So web developers used to be just front end or just back end, and now they're front end, back end, and now DevOps or full stack and DevOps line is kind of blurred. And you're talking about web developers becoming problem solvers and building tools. The trend is going towards web developers making tools for web developers.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing I think that I would like to see, but do you think might be where we're headed is more GUIs for people that are learning the server? I know Webmin is one GUI that people can use,
Mm-hmm.
but like GitHub has a GUI for like a desktop application.
Mm-hmm.
But do you see some kind of GUI or something more for helping full stack developers in DevOps?
So I think that's a point that I was trying to make, that with the new influx of back-end developers and people are having to go back to the terminal to run their task runners, to get their packages up and running, that there will be more tools made to pull people away from the text hard-code language to the more visual. I mean, for a long time we had cPanel, we had CyberDuck for uploading files. There've been a lot of different ways of taking it away from the hard language to a more visual, easy to use, user-friendly, solving the problem of, how can we make this a better experience, not only for myself as a developer, but for maybe junior developers who need to step up, or the average user that we're now bringing into being able to do and utilize these new technologies. So yes, I do think that we will see more graphical-based interfaces for some of the more complex tasks. I mean, they're already out there. A little side note story is one of my friends, his son is 14 years old, and he's like, oh, hey, I've been studying the web for the past 4 months. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Oh, what are you working on? And I thought, I was going to see a WordPress site or something. He had a full stack up and running. He was running Laravel on DigitalOcean and making Git commits and having it automate to update his site live. And it was amazing because, these tools weren't available when I was starting out, and it's impressive that the average user can go from nothing into that in 4 months. Might want to swap.
I think we got it. This is a live microphone. Okay. You were mentioning earlier how Steve Jobs killed Flash.
Yes.
Flash is a proprietary language. Do you foresee in your freelance experience web technologies remaining an integral part of the development for all the platforms, meaning not only websites, web applications, but also mobile applications and the Internet of Things?
So there's been a trend recently where it has done that shift to and away from. So for a while, a lot of companies were bringing out their own applications, their mobile applications, to give that web experience in a very specialized way, but they're having to write it twice. Again, I had made the joke about, how many of you download the app just to find out the schedule for today, where it's come to the realization that we don't need to move away from the web. Everyone has the browser already installed onto their phone. So why download an extra app to do something that I can just do with a single click of an address? Of being able to make that, wonderful thing that Sir Tim Berners-Lee said, that I have an infinite amount of applications at a click of a single address. And it's, it really makes the internet a wonderful thing, the web a wonderful thing.
So whenever anybody asks me what I do, I talk about web. I'm a web developer, but that's such a broad term these days. And I often compare it to the medical industry. So you have doctors, you have nurses, you have specialists. And a second part of this is the rise of the physical web that we're seeing with beacons and stuff like that. Do you think there is a place in the future for more basic coders, just like HTML, CSS, or do you see that being outsourced more in the future, especially since the physical web is coming into the picture, do you think there will be a place for these blue-collar workers in, say, some of these small rural towns? Like, my town's like a 3,000. I would love to go back and maybe teach a code class one day and see if they could start doing some physical web stuff.
So, it's a little multi-layered question. Will we see the small town rural developer? I don't think so. For the simple fact that we are interconnected now. It doesn't matter really what location you're in, you can put out the same thing, and we're no longer confined to a single market. So will we see people taking a step back and going with just HTML and CSS? I mean, it has its place for certain projects. Everything is a tool. As I said, if that meets the certain criteria, the best way for the project you're working on, that's great. But with the physical web coming out, everything being connected, I do think we will see a lot more coming out. I mean, our job is problem solvers, right? We want to make everything easier for everyone. I believe it was Bill Gates that said something along the lines of, I love lazy programmers because they find the easiest way to get something done. I don't think that's confined to just coders. We want to do that for everyone. We want to make everyone's lives easier and better. So if there's a need for it, if there's a way to do it, I think that we'll find that way as developers, as engineers.
Hi. In your experience, do you have a preferred set of languages or tools, frameworks that you like to use?
There's a couple that I fall back on. I hear the chuckles out there because a lot of people have heard me preach about it. So I use Symfony as my go-to, right? Because it's able to do as much as I want. But again, it is just a tool. So there are times when I steer away from it because it's not the most effective tool for the project that I'm working on. I think as developers, we need to have that agile sort of nature, not agile in the Scrum manner, but agile is being able to switch our modes, our ways of thinking, to not think of I am a PHP developer, I'm an Android developer, I'm a Swift developer. We need to think of ourselves as problem solvers, developers, and we choose the best tool for the job. But yeah, as far as my go-to, it's the standard of PHP with Symfony, and it's very fast and efficient. Did we ever get any clarification from what the first P is in that PAMP stack?
I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, but...
Sure, why not? Let's give it a shot.
So he's talking about pampserver.com, which is, I guess, instead of the lamp, the L is replaced with the P, the personal. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
So it sounds like it's a software as a service, though, where you go into the site and they're...
It looks like. I was just Googling it a little bit.
So it goes back to the software as a service. I haven't mentioned this, but I mean, it's what we are striving to do. We're creating easier experiences for the average user to be able to get into these complex environments without the need of having to do a year of study about a single language or whatever it is that they're diving into. And I do think that, if it works for that person, if that's their go-to, that's great. That's just another example of some of the things that are available out there that's always evolving. Any other questions? All right.
Folks, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this morning, for all of your time, as well as our presenter coming out and sharing all of your insight and wisdom with us here this morning. So,
Thank you.
Another big round of applause for Mr. Joe Cavagna. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of Hall of Fame this week. Have a great day.